finals of the Stanley Cup playoffs. I'm just going to talk about these two series kind of broadly, kind of the way I did in my NBA playoff video. If you watched that, I'm not going to get into the game specifics, because I think at this point in the playoffs, that is not as important anymore, because I think for the most part the teams are playing the way they're gonna play, and it just comes down to matchups and things like that. But our Stanley Cup final will be played between the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers. I said at the beginning of the playoffs that this felt like the best year for Canada to finally break their cup drought. And one Canadian team is only 4 wins away from lifting the Stanley Cup. Now, I don't know how many other Canadian fan bases are backing the Oilers. I saw quite a few Canucks fans saying that they would prefer the Panthers to win. Calgary Flames fans are certainly rooting for the Panthers as well. I'm not sure about the Winnipeg Jets. I believe your Eastern Conference teams in Canada all likely prefer Edmonton over the Florida Panthers. But I can't be confident in that. I don't know. And this is the first Stanley Cup appearance for Connor McDavid, is it not? I'm pretty confident in that. But I will quickly do a Google search. So, Connor McDavid was drafted in 2015. Of course. Boom, 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 boom. So, let's go back. So, his first playoff appearance, he lost in the second round to the Ducks. Then lost in qualifying round to the Blackhawks, lost the first round to the Jets, lost the conference finals to the Avalanche, lost in the second round to the Golden Knights. So yes, this is the first Stanley Cup playoff appearance for Connor McDavid as a Edmonton Oiler, and the potential for the first Stanley Cup win for the Oilers since 1990. And this would be the first Stanley Cup win in the history of the Florida Panthers organization. I have some notes, as I am on to do, so these were just kind of my thoughts I compiled after the series ended. We'll start with the Western Conference because I watched more games in that series. As always, you guys know I'm able to watch more in the West than in the East. I'm sorry to my East Coast sports fans. Watching this, it's just a time zone issue, and I wish I was able to watch more East Coast sports. Dallas has now gotten the quintessential Peter DeBoer coaching experience, in my opinion. I've seen a lot of Dallas fans on both sides of the argument on whether or not Pete DeBoer should remain as head coach. Going into next season, speaking as a fan of the Vegas Golden Knights, we had our run with Pete DeBoer as head coach ended similarly to how it has ended for Dallas here. And it seems to be a Peter DeBoer special. At this point, it seems that his teams have a ceiling, so to speak, and it tends to be the conference finals. I felt bad for Dallas in Game 6, though it has to be said. The shots were 35 to 10 in favor of Dallas. But Skinner, I gave Skinner a little bit of flack in the last video. A few of you guys pushed back against that in the comments. Skinner has been playing very well. He has a .920 save percentage over his last 8 games, and he is getting extremely hot coming into the Stanley Cup Finals. Reminds me a bit of the postseason run for Aiden Hill last season, and that's going to be very important because, in my opinion, the biggest negative that I have going against the Oilers in this Stanley Cup Finals matchup is I'm just kind of looking at the goalies that the Florida Panthers have beaten to get to this point. They beat Shesterkin, and then they were taking on Swayman, and then before that, to start the playoffs, they were going against Vasilevsky, of course. So they have faced 3 truly elite goalies pretty much every single round. Swayman, Vasi, and Shesterkin. The Oilers, not as much. I feel like the goalies they faced haven't been as good. Ottinger did not impress me this series. He let in a softie, especially in that Game 6. It's not all on him, obviously. It never is all on the goalie, but goalies, during the playoffs, goalies become the most important position. But I just feel that Florida has beaten an elite goalie every step of the way these playoffs, and Stuart Skinner is going to have to play even better than those 3 guys I just mentioned for Edmonton to win this cup. And, right now he's really hot, so I think he can pull that off potentially. But like I said, that for me is the biggest negative point I have for the Oilers in this matchup. It's just their quality of goalie is not to the same standard that the Panthers have already beaten. Although that's not to say that he can't, over the course of a 7-game series, perform better than those more decorated netminders. Another negative for Dallas, Duchesne. Duchesne was brought in to be a difference maker in the playoffs for this team. A person to help Dallas get over the hump. And he was a complete non-factor. In this Edmonton series, he had some good play along the walls, but I really felt like they wanted more out of Duchesne than they got. But in my opinion, the main reason that Dallas lost this series was their special teams. And this continues to be a problem with Pete DeBoer teams, and mainly with Pete DeBoer, his loyalty to Steve Spott. We saw it in Vegas during the Pete DeBoer years. Our power play was terrible. There was like a stretch of, I think, more than 20 power plays that the Golden Knights did not score on. And Pete DeBoer continues to be loyal to Steve Spott. Give him jobs running the special teams. And in my opinion, that was one of, if not the main reason, Dallas lost this series. Edmonton scored more goals on Dallas power plays than Dallas did. Dallas was 0 for 14 on the power play against the Edmonton Oilers this season. And this series. And in this series, the Oilers had 4 power play goals plus the shorthanded goal, like I already mentioned. Now, I'm not saying that's just a failure on Steve Spott's behalf. The Edmonton Oilers have had a historically elite penalty kill in this playoff run. So far in the playoffs, they are a 93.9% on the penalty kill, nearly 94% on the penalty kill. So it's definitely a combination of Edmonton having an absolutely elite penalty kill, but also, given the history that we have known for years and years at this point, we know that Steve Spott's power play system is just completely anemic. Does not score. And I think if they go 3 for 14 on the power play, Dallas could have won this series. I'm not saying they would have, but they could have. A big question about this offseason will be Pavelski, whether or not he'll retire. Personally, I think he will. What's funny is I kind of made this note. I said that the Dallas Stars might be the San Jose Sharks of the 2020s. San Jose Sharks all through the 2010s. They had deep playoff runs. They made conference finals. They were getting into the second round. They even had a Stanley Cup Finals appearance, but they were unable to get over the hump. And now they're paying the price with a bottom-of-the-barrel team. So my question is, and what's funny is, obviously, hold on. Peter DeBoer was the long-term coach of the San Jose Sharks, and Joe Pavelski was a mainstay, an icon of those San Jose Sharks years. So my question now is, Dallas, are they going to become the 2020s version of the San Jose Sharks? I'm not saying they will, but right now it feels like they're on the path to be, just coming up a little bit short over and over and over. In my opinion, this series changed in Game 4. That was the real momentum shift. Dallas was up 2-0 at one point in that game, but Edmonton ends up coming back and winning that game. And I think that point was the series changer, because they had won 2 games in a row to that point. Oilers win Game 1, Dallas wins Game 2, and then there's the moment with the DJ, and it becomes this big controversial thing. I don't think any of that was intentional. I don't really want to breathe any more life into that. Then Dallas wins the next game. And I thought at that point, honestly, when Dallas got 2 in a row, because they took the one in Edmonton, personally, I felt like else was going to win the series after that point when they went up 2-1. But then game 4 happens, and it was the way it happened. Dallas got ahead, and I was like, okay, well, they might get 3. And at that point, it's really over. But then they rest on their laurels. The Oilers really woke up and attacked and recycling, and they get that game. They take the lead back. They go down 2 goals. And it felt, you could just kind of feel Dallas change, their mentality change. And then in game 6, we had the moment I've been waiting for these entire playoffs. From Connor McDavid, I was waiting for him to just have his superhero moment, have his takeover moment, and that's not me saying he's been bad these playoffs. He's been exceptional. He has more than 30 points, right? He's been one of the best players in these playoffs, if not the best. But I was waiting for that individual effort, end-to-end, be the guy moment, and he did in game 6 to open the scoring on the power play. And that was the moment I was waiting for these entire playoffs. On the reverse side, Robertson now, Jason Robertson for Dallas. He has shrunken in both this year's playoffs and last year's playoffs. He's still been decent, but if you compare his regular season play to his postseason play, it feels like you're watching 2 different players, and I don't know what that is. But he only had 16 points through 19 games played, and he struggled last year as well. So I don't know if it's a mental thing with him. I don't know if it's just the way the game changes when you get to this level, this point in the playoffs. But if Dallas wants to win a cup, if they want to take that next step, Robertson is going to have to be better. And Tanev is obviously the big question right now, Tanev and Pavelski's future. But I'll do separate videos on off-season moves. Also, I felt like the physicality from the stars that had been present through all the previous rounds was not there this round against Edmonton. It'll be interesting to see if they release injury updates, but I don't know if that's even the reason for it. But the way that Dallas was playing Vegas, physically against us, I was not seeing that same style of play against Edmonton. Okay. Florida versus New York. Again, I'm not going to have as much to say about this series, but I'm just going to kind of speak freely about the series as a whole. The top guys for New York really did not show up, and this was the same problem they had last season. Last season was even worse than this, because I would say last year's New York team, on paper, talent-wise, was better than this year. But when the playoffs came around, everybody's scoring dried up. It was a little bit better this year, obviously. The Rangers get to the Eastern Conference Final. But in this series against Florida, Panarin, Zibanejad, and Kreider combined for only 1 goal in the series. Those are like 3 of your best offensive players. And Kreider, in the series before this, in the series-winning game, had a hat trick. To go from winning a series on a hat trick to getting one, or that trio only having 1 goal in this entire 6-game series against Florida is just unacceptable for these top-level guys. And then the big question mark for New York is gonna be Jacob Trouba. Whether you just take the captaincy off him, whether you trade him. I don't know if his contract's up. I don't know if they trade him or let him walk or whatever it would be. But whether you get away from Trouba or not. A lot of people are questioning his leadership after this series. He had 22 penalty minutes across these playoffs. So that's more than an entire period of hockey sitting in the box. And as the captain, you can't be sitting in the box that much. And also, I saw multiple times in this series, he would take himself out of the play on defense, trying to get a big hit. He cared more about getting the hit than playing the puck defensively. For as good as Florida was, I think Shesterkin was the second best player on the ice this series. I think Barkov was the best player in this entire series. But give me Shesterkin is the second best. This guy is so good. He had a 926 save percentage this series. And I didn't know this till I looked. I saw today the Rangers were outshot in 13 out of their 16 playoff games. So Shesterkin was getting peppered every single game. And even in this series against the Panthers, New York won 2 of these games. The Panthers were living in the Rangers' end all series long. The fact that the Rangers won 2 of these games is entirely because of Shesterkin. And the only problem with that is now there's a rumor that Shesterkin wants an 8-year contract at $12 million a year. Obviously there'll be negotiations. The final number might be closer to 10.5. But if you're New York, you have to ask yourself, can we afford to pay him $12 million a year as the goalie? Do you end up with a Montreal Canadiens Carey Price situation? But then also, can you afford to not do that? Because he's clearly one of the best goalies in the entire league. He's probably the best player in New York. And maybe he is worth that. But then, okay, well now, how do we, we have to still have skaters and defensemen and everything else. So it's going to be a big question mark coming into this offseason. In a similar vein, Kako, this is his last game in New York. He's looking like he's not living up to his draft position at all. I already said I thought Barkov was the best player on the ice in this entire series for either team. His defense is overwhelming. He's showing why he deserved to win the Selke. He's just completely shutting down the other team. I mean, the Panthers' forecheck in general is elite. I talked about Ben Aaron's Benajed Kreider only having 1 goal between them. A huge part of that is the elite forecheck and defense of the Florida Panthers. And that's going to be something the Edmonton Oilers are going to have to try and figure out how to get past. Not to mention the Forsling pairing. I feel like all playoffs long, if the Forsling pair was on the ice, it didn't matter who was on the other team, how good they were, how elite those players were. They were getting shut down. Not to mention Bobrovsky, 2.2 goals against average. He looks a little bit worse than he did last playoffs, in my opinion. But he's still playing at a very, very high level. What what else? What else? Yeah, Florida kept the Rangers. It felt like every time I was watching, because I had this game on, and sometimes I'd switch around to other things, come back to it, right? It basically felt like every time I was watching this series, no matter what game it was, the Rangers were in their own zone, and the Panthers were just peppering Shesterkin with pucks. Like they couldn't get out of their zone. And the entire top 6 forwards, the top 6 skaters for the Panthers had at least one goal in this series, just elite depth. So, this Stanley Cup Finals matchup is very interesting. I think that Edmonton will clearly have the best player in the series with McDavid. Him, Draisaitl, and Hyman. Maybe. Those are going to be your best players in Edmonton in this series. The Panthers, they have the depth too. Like I said, all of the top 6. That defense, like from Barkov, the forecheck, the Forsling pair. Evander Kane was out the last series, but I think he's expected to come back by game 1 of this series because McDavid was double shifting for a little bit there against the Stars. He won't have to do that against Florida, I don't believe. So he'll be able to save his energy a bit more, which he'll need to do. Dealing with, I'm assuming Barkov will try to be matched up with McDavid every time his line's on the ice. I imagine Florida's plan will have Barkov and the Forsling pair out there when McDavid's line is on the ice, and just try to forecheck and shut those guys down, then let their second line or third line try and score goals against the Oilers' other lines. I imagine that's the plan. But Panthers, they're the back-to-back Eastern Conference champions. They've been to the Stanley Cup Finals already. Last year is their second appearance in as many years. This is the first time for McDavid in the Stanley Cup Final, but like I said, he right now is showing me exactly what I wanted to see from him. He took over that Game 6. He showed why he's the best player in the league. Man. This matchup is so interesting to me. It really is. Because like I said, my main thing here is looking at the quality of goalies that Florida has already beaten, and seemingly how easy they have beaten them. And then going to Skinner. Like, Skinner's playing very well right now, obviously. I think this series goes to 7. I think this series goes to 7, and I think that at one point in this series, the Oilers are going to blow out the Panthers in one game, like 5-2 or something. And I think that's going to happen early, like in the first 3 games, Oilers are going to get a big win, like 3+ goals win. Who do I think's going to win? This is the thing, I don't make these decisions where I come in here. I try to talk myself into it over the course of the video. Let's look at the Vegas odds. Let's see. Okay, so Florida is -130. Edmonton is plus 160 on ESPN Sportbook. FanDuel. FanDuel has Edmonton plus 106. Florida minus 128. And then DraftKings. DraftKings has Florida minus 130. Edmonton plus 110. I'm just gonna look at one more. Every single sportsbook has the Panthers as the favorite in Vegas. Does anybody have Edmonton? Nobody has Edmonton. Bet365, FanDuel, MGM, ESPN, DraftKings. Wow. Alright. I think we're going to find ourselves in a similar situation as we did in my NBA video. Because in that video I have picked against Edmonton the last 2 rounds. I picked them to beat the Kings. But I thought the Canucks would beat the Oilers. And I predicted the Stars to beat the Oilers, and they've proved me wrong both times. I picked against Florida in round 2. I thought Boston would beat them. They proved me wrong. Then I picked Florida in the Eastern Conference Final to beat the Rangers, and they proved me right. So if you're an Edmonton fan, you want me to pick against you, because they've proven me wrong. And if you're a Florida fan, you want me to pick Florida, because they've proven me right. Which is the same situation we had in the NBA video. So I'm going to say Florida Panthers in 7. But I'm going to stick to my prediction. I think Connor McDavid will be the best player in this series. I think Connor McDavid will have the most points in the series of any single player. I think there's going to be a blowout win for the Oilers in this series, but I ultimately think the Panthers will win it in 7. And that is my final prediction. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked the video, please leave a thumbs up and let me know what your thoughts were on either of these conference finals, West or East. Did you like them? Are you excited for the Stanley Cup final matchup? I've seen a few people different places on the internet saying they don't even want to watch this one, but personally, I'm interested to see how these teams match up. So, leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this almost every single day. Till next time, guys.